And then after that, if anybody wants to talk to her, maybe confidentially, she'll be available in the conference room if you want to talk to her in a confidential matter. So let's welcome Heather.
Thank you. I've been invited to speak about the marriage nullity process. As he said, my name is Heather Eichholz. And I guess what I want to do is talk to you first about who are canon lawyers, because that's who's doing your marriage nullity case. It becomes important to kind of have a feel for the people that are helping you. I'm a canon lawyer and the director of the Marriage Tribunal for the Diocese of Sioux Falls. Most people, when they think of canon law, they think of these bespectacled, gray-haired monsignors who sit in dark rooms and quote Latin and know all the rules of the church. That's not who canon lawyers are. Canon lawyers are people who come from all different places in the world and all different walks of life. The two pictures up here are actual canon law classes at the University of St. Paul, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. That's where I received my pontific faculties to practice canon law. You'll see you have religious, you have clerics, you have lay. And there's a variety of men and women in there. For example, this fellow, his name is Michael Nobel. He is of that Nobel family. He holds a doctorate in canon law, a doctorate in philosophy, a doctorate in theology, and sits on the board for the Nobel Peace Prize. You have a Franciscan, you have a Carmelite. In the picture over there, you have Sister Franca. She is a Dominican Mother Superior. She is currently working as a defender of the bond in the tribunal in Denver, Colorado. You have lay people in there. They're from all over. All over the world comes here. I went to school with people from Vietnam, people from Canada, people from the US, people from Puerto Rico, people from Mexico, Malaysia. Canonists are a variety of people who go to canon law school not to do marriage law, as odd as that sounds. We all went to canon law for a different reason. We all specialize in something other than marriage law. But because the majority of broken individuals within the Catholic Church and other Christian communities pertain to marriage, every single canon lawyer must be able to work in marriage. There are two schools of canon law in North America, Catholic University of America and St. Paul in Ottawa, Ontario. These universities are sanctioned and given faculties by the Holy Father. My license to practice canon law comes from the Holy Father himself, so I can go anywhere in the world and practice. What a canonist has to do is ask a bishop, may I be part of your diocese? But a canonist is not subject to the bishop, they're subject to the apostolic signatura in Rome. That's my boss. I report directly to the Vatican. I am audited every year by the Vatican. Canonists have advanced degrees in theology, philosophy, liturgy, English, psychology. Their canon law degree is a tack-on to whatever degrees they already have. Myself, I have degrees in theology and philosophy. And then I went to be canonist. Priests are usually asked to be canon lawyers by their bishop. That's who normally sends them. But be very clear, canon lawyers are not theologians, they're not moralists, they are not pastoral planners. We are lawyers in every sense of the word. We look at things through a legal perspective and apply the laws of the Catholic Church. Where we find the laws of the Catholic Church is the Code of Canon Law. There are approximately 1,752 laws in here. 20 pertain to marriage. The rest pertain to liturgy, priest rites, sacraments, sacramentals, and everything else that has to do with the church, including finance. So, now that you know a little bit about a canon lawyer, what's a declaration of nullity? Most people know it as an annulment. That is an incorrect term. Annulment means I'm dissolving something. I do not have the power to dissolve a marriage. I only have the power to look at the sacramental aspect of the marriage and declare if it happened or not. Exactly like I would if somebody questioned ordination, confirmation, baptism. A marriage is always good and natural and always existed. It is a matter of if the sacramental bond took place. It's a statement by the Catholic Church that at the time two people were married, something essential was missing that prevented a valid marriage bond from forming according to the Catholic Church's teaching. A declaration of nullity is granted when it's proven that something the church says must be there at the moment you said I do was missing. So, how do you begin this process? First of all, we have the form that I'm going to talk about tonight. It's the formal application because that's what most people's marriages fall under. Now, the focus of the petition and the investigation is to determine whether or not you freely gave consent and all the necessary essentials were there. How do I do that? Well, first of all, you have to visit your parish priest. This is not a process you can walk through by yourself. You have to have somebody to help you spiritually through the process. The parish priest does that. And I am a big believer of you going to your proper pastor. What that means is you live in a certain territory or a certain geographical location. There is a Catholic church within that geographical location. That is the church your home address belongs to. According to canon law, the location of your home determines the church you belong to and the pastor that is your proper shepherd. The reason I like you to go to the church in which your home address is because that priest can get to know you. That's very, very important in this process, as you'll see as we move through it. This first page is the instruction page to the formal petition that's currently in use at the tribunal. You'll notice that the first page at the very top speaks of jurisdiction. A canon lawyer once granted permission from a bishop to be in the diocese and part of the diocese may only exercise being a canon lawyer within the territory of that diocese. So there's certain criteria that your marriage has to meet in order for the tribunal to have proper jurisdiction. One or both of the people who were married must live in the diocese, or your marriage had to take place in the diocese. If you meet those criteria, then I can investigate your marriage. The next part speaks of the documents necessary. I am, according to law, never allowed to rip apart a marriage and investigate it, all the different things involved in it, if there is ever a possibility of reconciliation. In order to prove there is absolutely no possible situation where you can reconcile, there are certain documents that I need. These documents are notarized, filed, and state documents. The notary on them gives them public trust, which allows me to use them to say, there's no chance of reconciliation here. One of the church documents that I need is a certificate of baptism for all Catholic parties issued within the last 6 months. What that means is, when you decide to fill this petition out, you need to call the church of baptism, wherever you were baptized, and wherever your former spouse was baptized. And you need to have them issue you a baptismal certificate that includes the sacramental notations on the back. Reason being, you are not supposed to be allowed to marry unless you have confirmation. So the very first thing I have to do, I have to turn that over and make sure there's a confirmation for the parties. If there's not, I have to track that information down. The next thing that's occurred, sometimes a former spouse gets a declaration of invalidity, but for some reason, you were never notified. A declaration of invalidity or nullity is always noted on the baptismal certificate by the marriage. So that also helps me, because if you already have one, you can't nullify something twice. The next document I need is a certificate of marriage from the Department of Public Health. This proves you actually married. The reason we ask for this is because in the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Catholic churches, there is what's called a secret marriage. That means the marriage was a religious ceremony, but it was never officially or publicly recognized. So to make sure that you were officially and publicly recognized, we ask you to get a marriage certificate from the Department of Health. The last thing I need, and the most important document I will receive, is a divorce decree. Not a stipulation, not a judgment, not a filing, not a notice. It must say judgment and decree of divorce. All the other documents in your divorce proceedings are exactly that, proceedings. They do not finalize your status as being divorced. This document has to have the filed, has to have the judge's signature, and has to have all of the information filled in. This document tells me the reason for the divorce. It tells me the state officially recognizes you as divorced, so there's no chance of reconciliation. This document lets me accept the case. This is the first page of the petition. I get many, many people in my office who want to file a petition but do not want their former spouse notified. That is not an option in the Catholic Church. You must bring this page in to your parish pastor with correct contact information for your former spouse. There is no exception. That is mandated by the Vatican. The whole process is laid out by the Vatican. Nobody but the Holy Father can change it. The reason is the respondent was part of the marriage. The respondent has rights in the Catholic Church. They have the right to tell their side of the story. They have the right to see the petition. They have the right to review testimony. They have the right to see witness testimony. And they have a right to review the sentence and appeal the case if they feel it was done incorrectly. We always have to respect both sides of a marriage because it takes two people to form a matrimonial bond in the church. The next most important thing you can do is provide witnesses. Witness testimony moves your case forward. The law is very clear. Without witnesses, no case. So, there are instructions that go with this. First of all, call the people you want to be your witnesses and ask their permission. If you don't ask somebody's permission, and my office spends all that time printing the documents out, getting the envelope ready, putting the postage on, putting another envelope inside, they're not going to do it. The questions are invasive. There is no other way to say it. This whole process is invasive. So you need to get their permission. You need them to say, yes, I will be a witness for you. Witnesses do not need to be people who knew you during the marriage. Those are the worst witnesses. Witnesses that matter in this process. Childhood friends, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, people in your wedding party, people who knew you at university, people who saw the courtship happen. If you send us a witness that did not know you until after you were married, they will be eliminated. This process looks at your childhood, your dating history, your premarital sex history, your courtship. What made you marry that person at that time? That's what's important. Another important factor is the personal history. The personal history starts out with your family, your parents. This is important. It's very important that a canonist gets a picture of the family you grew up in. We all model what we saw. Example, when my husband and I married, he had been a Marine Corps brat his whole life. His mom and dad didn't belong to a bank because every 2 years they moved around the country. So he was used to a shoebox system for finances with envelopes. I grew up the exact opposite. My dad worked for a public utilities company. My mother worked for the school district. Everything was done through the Hibbing Co-op Credit Union. The bills were automatically withdrawn. That was a very hard thing once we married. But if a canonist gets an understanding of your background and your former spouse's background, chances are they're going to see red flags or things in your relationship that signify problems you didn't even know existed. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for those little things nobody thinks matter, but cause the biggest problems later on down the line. Your history is very important. Dating history is important. The Roman Rota is the supreme tribunal of the Roman Catholic Church. It resides at the Vatican. They give us case law that we follow. Their case law is very particular in the fact that if you never date and take your time, if you can only answer one question a day, a week, do that. Walk away from it. This is going to be difficult. This isn't going to be easy because what you have to do is rip your life apart and self-reflect. That's difficult for everybody. I could not do this. This would kill me. But it's necessary to have all those little facts to help you. The tribunal office takes this process very seriously. There are a total of 4 people who see what you hand in besides your parish priest. Your case, once it's completed, is sealed and put in a secret archive. An attorney could walk in tomorrow and hand me a subpoena. No, you're not getting it, because that's church law. Church law says you have a right to the good reputation that you have established, and the tribunal ensures you keep that reputation. When you come to our office, there is no judgment, because chances are, when I was reading your personal history, I made those same choices. I can always find myself in any case I read, because we're human and we're connected through that. There's only so many choices you can make in life, and we all make them. When you come in for the interview, I'm the person who interviews you. I'm not there to judge you. I am strictly there to get your story and make sure that I can do what's best for your immortal soul. That is my entire purpose, to make sure your immortal soul is taken care of when you pass. And that's what we do in this process. Since the largest portion of these talks are usually the questions, because I could speak on this subject for weeks and never cover everything, I want to open it up to your questions. And if you feel uncomfortable asking me in public, please, after this is finished, approach me. I have no problem giving you answers to anything that you need answers to.
What happens if you can't find your respondents where they live anymore because you've been divorced for so long and they've moved on their life? Obviously, I don't know if they're still in the same state or anywhere. So I can give you the name and what my last known address might have been. What happens then?
I pay for a subscription to a people search, and if you say, gee, Father, when you hand this in, I have no idea where they are, this is the last known address, the priests usually let us know that. And then Mercedes, who's the administrative assistant at the tribunal, she goes into the search engine that I pay for, and she searches for a proper address for them.
What happens if they don't respond back to your request?
I never hold up a case. Rome says you put the case through. So what we do is, the law gives them a minimum of 1 month to respond. Mercedes and I like to give them 2 months to respond because you never know with mail and things the way they are. So if we do not hear back from them, what I issue is called a decree of absence. So if at any time the respondent does all of a sudden call us, they do have a right to participate, and I pull the decree of absence. If they never contact us, the decree of absence stands, and we continue to move forward with the case.
Can you give us some examples of what would qualify as grounds for seeking an annulment?
The grounds for seeking an annulment are very broad.
It's kind of generalities.
Yeah, there's a lot of generalities. Force and fear. For example, a shotgun wedding. There's a real good example of that where a young man was standing at the altar, watching the bride walk down, and all of a sudden he realized he couldn't do this. So he ran out the side door of the church. Yet one of his groomsmen ran out, dragged him back in, and the priest didn't miss a beat. 10 years later, he filed for a declaration of invalidity. That's force and fear. The ground most used in the United States, and specifically written for the United States by the Vatican, is called lack of discretionary judgment. As Catholics, good Catholics, we all know how Catholic guilt can get to you. Catholic guilt can make you do some unusual things you would normally not do. This particularly pertains to the fact that Americans have to live in a dual world. On one side, we're Catholic and we're trying to live a Catholic life, and on the other side, we're just people in a community trying to live a civil life, a social life. And civil government and church government don't always coalesce. So you look at, did the person make the decision based on civil law? Did they make the decision based on social pressure? It used to be some years ago that if a young woman found herself expecting, you were expected to marry. The Catholic Church says, no, you don't do that. Because you don't know enough about each other. As a matter of fact, there's dioceses in the United States that refuse to marry a woman if she's pregnant. Because how much did that pregnancy play into your decision to marry? And can we really say that is free will consent? Another example is a condition. I'm going to marry you as long as you graduate from medical school. The person fails medical school, the person leaves and files for divorce. A marriage consented to with a condition can never be true because you are not truly giving 100% of yourself to the person. You're giving yourself only if. There's quality of a person. The quality I'm looking for is that you never ever light a cigarette in your entire life. What happens if the person did light a cigarette when they were 15? Now this person divorces them. How is that true consent? There's deceit. A very, very famous case dealing with deceit is one from Germany. A young man and a young woman were very, very excited to get married. And they would be at the young man's house, and they would be talking about how many children they were going to have, and how excited they were to start this family. The young man's father knew that the young man had mumps when he was a toddler and was sterile. He never told the young man or the young woman they could not have children. When the young woman found out she could not have children, she divorced the young man. The case went all the way to the Roman Rota. The Rota said deceit by a third party invalidates marriage. There's a lot of little tiny nuances that can play into our free will, and the grounds are based on all those small things.
I had a classmate come to me and say, well, would you testify to this incident that my husband did to you? And I can't even recall to this day. It's like over 20 years ago, 1990. Yeah, I could not even recall. I went to my pastor and said, what do I do? Because he called me in the middle of work, asking me to do this, and I said, yeah, we did testify, and so.
And normally, you'll never have to testify to what somebody does to you. Our witness questionnaires go out and they have been revised. Mercedes and myself sat down and we revised the witness questionnaires. They asked, how do you know the parties? Do you think they were ready for marriage at the time they married? It's mostly talking about the things you saw within the relationship of the two people, because that's what we're looking at. What is that relationship? How did they resolve conflict? Do you think that they truly cared about one another? Those types of things.
She was trying to use the incident to show his character. And it's like, to this day, I can't recall the incident that she was asking me to do. It's like, okay, what do I do since I can't recall this?
Normally, that's just what you tell the tribunal. Usually, the tribunal is pretty savvy on picking up on somebody's character. And that has a lot to do with the interview. Once you send all this paperwork in, you're going to get a letter. And the letter is going to say, can you please call the tribunal at this number and set up a personal interview? That personal interview is the time for me to get to know one another. By doing that, you get a good read on a person's character, and you can tell if testimony that comes in is factual or not. You know, there's always three sides to a marriage nullity case. There's the bride side, there's the groom side, and then there's the objective truth. And within all the perspectives of the testimony that the tribunal collects, usually you can find some of that objective truth to help you find your way. And that's why we rely on witnesses. A lot of times witnesses will make a statement they don't even realize is very important. Like, an example is, oh, well, you know, we were having a conversation and she told me she never wanted children. Oh, exclusion of children. You can't do that. That's invalid. Or, oh yeah, she married him for the medical insurance. Oh, that's total simulation. That invalidates your marriage. Or, you know, there was a prenuptial agreement. Oh, the church says no prenuptial agreements. So there's always those little things witnesses tell us that they don't even realize are very, very important.
Could you describe what the bond means and the person that's the defender of the bond, how important that is?
The defender of the bond, especially since they removed second instance, is the key player to the entire process. The bond of marriage is, think of it as a tether. When you say I do to this person, you are tethering yourself to them for life. For life doesn't mean if they cheat, because infidelity does not invalidate marriage. That's according to the book of Hosea. It doesn't mean if things are financially hard. It doesn't mean if you're arguing about children. This bond is perpetual and lasts through everything. And if you think about it, that's where the two become one. Everything you do in marriage affects the other person's salvation. So this bond exists until you come to the tribunal and ask us to look at your marriage. Okay? You're just asking us to see if this bond exists or not. What happens is I completely instruct the case, collect all the testimony, interview you, get all your witnesses to comply, get all the documents that are necessary, get the whole case put together. And then I send the case to someone who's called the defender of the bond. The defender of the bond is set up for no other reason than to poke holes in everything I just did. This is where the sacrament exists. This is where the bond exists. This is what you have to overcome. I don't see your argument. I don't see this fact. Where is this coming from? His whole purpose is to stand up for the sacrament of marriage because it doesn't have a voice otherwise. And the sacrament of marriage is one of the most important sacraments you receive. So the defender of the bond makes sure that's protected.
Is it mandatory that a nullification takes place after a divorce or no?
Yes, we have to wait until the divorce is finalized.
Actually, I didn't mean that. What I meant was, divorce is done, everybody's happy. Do you have to nullify, or is it an option?
No. With this process, you really have to wait until you're ready for it. I've had people who have been divorced 20, 30 years finally come and say, I think I'm ready for this process. Because the process is very invasive into your personal life, it's very, very important that you actually wait at least a year after the divorce, so that what I'm not seeing is all that hurt and all that anger from a divorce. It's very good if you step back. It's also recommended that you speak to your pastor before you do this process. I need to make sure spiritually you're in a good place, just because the process is invasive.
Give us an example of nuptial agreement.
Okay. The Catholic Church frowns on prenuptial agreements. Prenuptial agreements are entered into when people have a lot of assets. And they want to make sure that those assets remain separate from the marriage. If you have a business, say you are a farmer, you have a large corporation, this is your livelihood. The Catholic Church says that's okay to say, I need to keep this corporation outside of this marriage because this is what I do for a living. This is my business, my livelihood. When a prenuptial agreement invalidates a marriage is when it specifically has divorce language in it. What I mean by that is, about 7 years ago, I'm reading a prenuptial agreement, and the prenuptial agreement states, in the event of divorce, you leave with the clothes on your back. This was presented to the bride the night before the wedding. She panicked. What's she supposed to do? The invitations are sent, the RSVPs are done, everybody's coming tomorrow. She signed it. The Catholic Church says that's invalid. You cannot put things in place in case of divorce. And if anybody is ever curious, I do have a list of Catholic attorneys in the area that know how to write a prenuptial agreement that does not include divorce language, but can safeguard certain assets, especially if you go into a second marriage. Older people who enter a second marriage may already have a will written up. The will may include their children from their first marriage. It is okay, according to the Catholic Church, in that instance, to have a prenuptial agreement. You are protecting the assets of your children. And there are attorneys in this entire diocese who can help you create the proper prenuptial agreement.
How about if a Catholic marries a non-Catholic and they get married by a justice of the peace? Then, down the road, they get a divorce, and then the Catholic decides to be married, and the priest says, well, to get married in a church, you were going to have to get an annulment. I thought if you got married by a justice of the peace, that was invalid.
You're correct. What that's called is a lack of canonical form. When you're baptized Catholic, the law says you have to marry a certain way. That way is in a church, by the priest, with two witnesses. If a person gets married by a different type of a pastor in a non-Catholic church or by a justice of the peace, it's considered a lack of form. We have to have that on file, but it's a much simpler process that takes about a week. You fill out the application for lack of form, you send us the same types of documents, and then we just send you a letter stating, okay, we've entered it in the book, you're good to go. It's just a matter of keeping track of your decisions regarding marriage as far as the Catholic Church goes. We want to make sure all of your bases are covered. We want to make sure that you're okay to marry again. So like I said, it's a real simple process. Usually takes us about a week. I know there have to be more questions. Nothing you ask can surprise or shock me.
What is
the reason for a responder to test? Some respondents truly feel the marriage was valid. They will go through the grounds and they will honestly believe none of the grounds apply. They will truly tell me, I gave my consent freely because I loved the person. And that's okay. You know, that's their right to say that. But once they say that, I tend to go a little bit different with the nullity case because I need to investigate why they feel that way. It does not stop the process. But I do need to slow down and I need to investigate a few more things. I do give negatives. This process is not a guarantee. It's not a rubber stamp. I handed out 25 negatives out of 63 cases this last year. Now, that doesn't mean the marriage is valid. It could mean it was found on the wrong ground. It could mean there was a pinnacle piece missing. You always have the opportunity to submit a new petition and go for a different ground. But negatives are a reality.
What role, if any, does cohabitation before the marriage play in
In my experience, talking to thousands of people coming through the office, cohabitation is a no. Do not do it. It leads to problems. Everybody wears a mask. You always want your best persona to be seen when you are not married. I have seen women who get up early, brush their teeth, brush their hair, and then get back in bed. Well, this is how I wake up in the morning. What do you think happens the day after they're married and he sees what you really wake up like? Cohabitation is a lie. It's a lie we tell ourselves. The bottom line is premarital sex is a no. And for some reason, our Catholic guilt does not kick in there. It kicks in after we marry or after we get pregnant. Take your time. Slow down. Get to know somebody on a level more than physical because communication suffers in cohabitation. There is no communication. You don't talk about anything of substance. Oh, how was your day? Yeah, it was great. Oh, how was your day? Oh, it was fine. Oh, well, do you want to play Nintendo? That's not communication. So you don't know how to communicate when the hard stuff happens in marriage. When the kid gets suspended. When the mortgage isn't paid. When all of a sudden he drives up in a new truck and never said 2 words to you about it. Cohabitation is destructive.
Sorry. Current defender of the bond.
The current defender of the bond is Father Jonathan Venner.
how long does it take being Catholic forever? I was always laboring under the idea that if anybody were to get a divorce, it took forever because the eyes of the church that says, what's the hurry, we have eternity. So,
Thanks to Vatican II, when they rewrote the code, they gave us a time frame. Your case must be completed in 12 months. Right now, the Sioux Falls Tribunal is in a really, really good place. We have no backlog. All of our cases are caught up, and we're finishing cases in approximately 6 to 9 months. And that includes sending them to a psychological expert if they need it. So we're doing quite well.
What happens if, like, the partner doesn't respond, then respond after 6 months or 9 months?
We do have cases where all of a sudden the respondent will pop up after the case is finalized. It does not make a difference. The case is finalized. It's been sealed and put in the archive. They are welcome to come in and review it, but the appeal time is gone and there's nothing they can do about the sentence.
You said something that reminded me, I heard some discrepancy in the past 10 years about various things as far as like mental illness and grounds. I've heard a couple different things that didn't, maybe you could expound on that.
Mental illness such as schizophrenia or depression?
Well, that's probably where, I don't know.
Okay, depression is considered not a ground, but a factor in the marriage. Okay? Schizophrenia, psychoses, those are considered invalidating under a very specific ground called incapacity to assume. Incapacity to assume means they wholeheartedly wanted to consent to this marriage. They wanted this marriage with this person at this time. But for whatever reason, they are unable to fulfill the criteria the Catholic Church has set for marriage.
Oh, okay, so my mind has been jogged. So at the moment that they say I do, if this does not manifest, that's what the crux of the matter is.
That's where a licensed clinical psychologist comes into the tribunal. What I do is I'll collect up the file and I'll say to Father Odell, I really need you to take a look at this. I need to have a conversation with you. I need to know if this was present in the person before marriage. Because Father Odell is a licensed clinical psychologist, I can have that conversation with him and he can give me the necessary information and say, yes, because this particular disorder starts in adolescence and here's where I see the signs of it. And that helps me understand better what was going on with this person and why they had trouble fulfilling those obligations.
So some mental illnesses can or cannot be grounds.
Yes.
Okay, that's what the discrepancy is.
What would be the usual cost for an annulment?
Okay, in order for a tribunal to charge, you have to get permission from the Apostolic Signature in the Vatican. I have permission to ask for a $50 filing fee. Nothing else. At the end of the process, though, because it costs approximately $5,000 per case, I will send a letter asking you, would you like to make a donation to the tribunal? And usually the donation letter says $600, but it's whatever you can give, at whatever time you can give. The reason a declaration costs so much is because you have to figure in all the costs of running a business. I have staff, I have myself. We get paid, we get medical, we get dental. You have to figure in photocopying, phone expenses. Is the photocopier black and white or is it color? You have to figure in the cost of envelopes, the cost of postage. Each case has quite a few pieces that are put together. But if a tribunal is charging you an exorbitant rate, don't pay it. I mean, seriously, don't pay it. Ask them, did you get this approved by the Apostolic Signatura? I'm getting ready to send in what's called my Rome report. My Rome report outlines every single case I have done for the year, the ground the case was done on, and whether it was an affirmative or a negative. It also includes an explanation of any type of hiccups we had during the year. It also includes if I have a backlog and my fees. I have to send them a listing of my fees, and I have to get an approval every single year from them to charge those.
What about participating in other sacraments if I'm going through the annulment process?
Okay, that's a twofold answer because it depends on if you're civilly married or if you're not. If you are not living with somebody or civilly married, you can have your sacraments. Go to communion. Never deny yourself communion if you can have it. If you are living with somebody or civilly remarried, now how you participate in the parish is completely up to the pastor. Reason being, you can cause scandal to a Catholic community. We never want people gossiping about you behind your back. The only thing the law formally says you cannot do if you're cohabitating or civilly married is receive communion. But you can always go up for the blessing. Nobody has any other questions? You guys didn't even ask the hard ones.
What about, if you are cohabitating, you're legally divorced, you're cohabitating, but you're going to confession?
No communion. Anybody else?
Say you're divorced and the ex gets remarried, do you still have to get no?
Yes, because technically, according to the church, he's committing adultery. Until you have a declaration of nullity, you are always recognized as married to that person. The church does not recognize civil divorce.
As an addendum to what she said, the ex goes very separate ways, and then the ex remarried and says, this is what I want to do. Okay, the other person, the first person, if they just flat don't care, does it impinge on that person to get an annulment, or it's their sin, it's not my problem kind of thing?
Remember the tether. You're always tethered together as one. So what one does always affects the others. So what you have to do is you have to sit back and you have to think, okay, first, why did this divorce happen? And in all candor, who wants to be married to a jackass? I mean, to be completely frank, who wants to be married to somebody who treated you like dirt? That's what this process is for. This process is for good people who, my spouse treated me like dirt, so now what do? Yeah, you don't have to live like that. So that's what you have to think about. If they're running around, they've divorced you, they have girlfriends, they're remarrying, you have a shot to get rid of that baggage and have a happy life. I mean, to straight talk, that's what it is. That's why this process is here for you. Christ said, Moses gave you divorce for the hardness of your heart. That's what this is. This is for the hardness of our human hearts. And it's for all the bad things we do to one another. The process is supposed to let you let go of that. When you come to the tribunal, you hand all that baggage over to me. Now it's my responsibility to take care of that baggage for you and make sure that you let it go.
Do you find if your spouse cheated on you after marriage, but does the tribunal see that the marriage was valid? It's just they turned into a dirtbag 20 years later or whatever.
Normally, they were a dirtbag to begin with. In all honesty, that's what I have found. If a person comes to me and this guy cheated on them, but it happened 20 years in the marriage, chances are when I get witness testimony, it's going to tell me a different story. It has happened every single time like clockwork. He was running around on her and she didn't know. Or infidelity points backwards to the courtship, where maybe it was an on-again, off-again courtship because the person wanted to see other people. So, although infidelity is not a ground itself, it always points me in a different direction, and usually there's something underlying that.
I had a coworker say to me that she was raised Catholic, married, and then she divorces, and since the divorce, I don't go to church because I can't receive communion. How do you respond to that?
That hurts me. I'm very sorry to hear that. I do not like to see any Catholic go without communion. My whole job is to bring them back to the sacraments. But as far as responding to that, all you can do is encourage her to go talk to her pastor and find some type of a spiritual path, spiritual healing, and that's what the pastor's for.
It's a hard thing to respond to.
It's a very difficult thing
The
to respond.
perception is, I'm divorced and I can't receive communion.
And there's a fine line, because if she's not cohabitating and she's not civilly married, she can receive communion. If you're divorced and you're happy being divorced and you're living a single life, by all means, go get your grace. Don't take that away from yourself. It's only if you're cohabitating or civilly remarried.
Yeah, some good healing stories, what the good things that you see comes out of this.
When somebody comes into my office dead set against the process, and I am able to say something, and the person goes, I never thought about it that way. Or I'm able to show the person they are a good person worth more. Those are good days for me. We all are good people. God created us for a reason. God loves us for no other reason than we exist. We don't have to do anything for it. Why would he want you to be miserable? So when I can help somebody realize that they have a lot of potential that they initially didn't see in themselves, that's a good day. Don't get me wrong, I would love to come to work and have them say there is no work for you. That would be a very good day.